let's try and unpack this. Picture this. A house in Nashville, right? Up on Love Hill. Owner's gone.
Right.
And inside, you've got classical music playing.
Yeah.
Loudly. It's Dvorak, the Ninth Symphony, just repeating. And then you see her. A young woman. She's clearly emaciated, just skin and bones, eyes closed. And she's suspended, pinned right to a support column in the living room.
Suspended how?
With fishing line stapled into the wood. And it's cutting into her skin because, well, she's been there a while.
Yeah.
Early decomposition is setting in.
Oh, wow.
And there's a knife driven straight through her breastbone. It makes it look like she's just held up by the blade alone. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We've got this really fascinating stack of material you've shared, articles, reports, notes, all detailing this incredibly complex, really disturbing investigation.
Yeah.
It starts right there in that house, but it goes places you just wouldn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission today is to really dig into this material. We want to pull out the key insights, the surprising connections, the moments that turn the whole case.
Following the thread from that one bizarre scene.
All the way to, an international hunt and apprehension. It's quite a story.
It really is. So starting there on Love Hill, beyond just the sheer shock of it, what other details jump out from the material? You mentioned she was malnourished.
Critically malnourished, yeah. The victim is identified. She's Allegra Justson, 21 years old. But the Emmy report, described in the sources, it paints this picture of just extreme emaciation.
Like starvation.
Severe starvation. Every bone visible, organs atrophied. It wasn't just thin.
Okay.
And the way she was suspended, pinned to that post, the sources really emphasize how meticulous it was.
Fishing line, staples, the knife.
Exactly. It creates this terrifying display. And the first question investigators had, according to the material, was, did this take massive strength? Or was it something else, like pure hatred or something even stranger?
Right, because it also feels so staged. Like you said, the classical music, the pose, the fact that the owner is conveniently gone.
Yes. Deliberate.
Yeah.
Almost like sending a message.
That paradox is right there from the start in the material, isn't it? The awful violation, but then this description of an almost artful pose.
Deeply disturbing contradiction, yeah. It suggests something really complex is going on with the killer's motive. Not just violence, but what's the message? And who's it for? Those are the questions.
So stepping into this is Detective Taylor Jackson. And the sources paint her as, experienced, sharp, but dealing with some professional drama.
Definitely. Her team's been broken up. She's got a new lieutenant, Lieutenant Elm, who sounds challenging. Well, the material describes him as dismissive, especially of psychological profiling, which Taylor really relies on.
Oh, that's not good.
No. And he also seems erratic. Maybe unwell. So Taylor's in a tough spot. She doesn't have her usual experienced team. Her backup's gone.
And her new partner, Detective Ren McKenzie.
Mackenzie. He's described as enthusiastic, eager, but definitely green.
Nice mistakes.
Yeah, the source notes he's prone to rookie errors, like talking too much about case details publicly. Taylor's used to the veteran. She trained herself, so it's a difficult dynamic, especially with this kind of case.
But she does have connections outside the official chain of command, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned her best friend, the ME, and her fiancé.
Right, and those are crucial, according to the reports. Sam, her best friend, the medical examiner, gives her trusted, immediate insights from the autopsy, confirms the starvation, other physical detail.
Okay.
And her fiancé, Baldwin, he heads up a BAU team, so he brings that vital behavioral analysis angle, which becomes more and more important, even though Lieutenant Elm doesn't really believe in profiling.
So, okay, bizarre scene, tricky team situation. What are the first investigative steps they take, according to the material?
Well, obviously the standard stuff, processing the scene, the autopsy, but they also immediately chase leads tied to the victim, Allegra Johnson, and the location.
Like the homeowner.
Yeah, they talk to Hugh Bangor, the owner. He seems cooperative, doesn't look involved, and they look into Allegra's background, which the sources show points them towards a local pimp, Tyrone Hill. He knew her.
Okay, so victimology.
Initially suggests, maybe an easy target, involved in drugs, solicitation, maybe wouldn't be missed right away. But the material notes Tyrone Hill seemed genuinely upset about her death, and his alibi checked out, so he moves out of the picture as the killer.
All right, so they've got the scene, the victim info, some early leads. But those weird elements, the music, the posing, the starvation, they keep standing out.
They do. They feel like a signature, something deliberate, something repeated.
And Taylor senses it's bigger than just this one murder.
Exactly. Her intuition kicks in. The material says she decides to search VICAP.
Right, VICAP. Just quickly, for anyone listening who isn't familiar.
Good point. VACAP is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. It's an FBI database. Police departments share info on violent crimes, especially homicides, trying to connect similar cases across different places. It looks for patterns, victim types, MO, locations, that kind of thing.
Got it.
So Taylor searches VICAP, and she's very specific, looking for cases involving art theft, artistic elements and murders, and starvation deaths. And this search, it's a huge turning point.
What does she find?
It pulls up cases that are strikingly similar. The big one is a case in Manchester, Tennessee. Black victim, classical music involved.
Just like Nashville.
Just like Nashville. And the search brings up others too, solved and unsolved. It starts to look like a series, a much broader series.
And this is where the name Tumachalayo comes up, the butcher.
Yes, that's the link. The material shows these U.S. cases, especially that Manchester victim, are linked by DNA to a serial killer who is active in Europe, Florence, Italy, and London. This killer, nicknamed the Second Machalayo, was known for killing emaciated women and post-mortem sexual assault. The DNA from the Manchester victim connects him, or someone using his MO, across the Atlantic.
So a European serial killer, potentially now operating in Tennessee.
Yeah.
But the sources say there were some inconsistencies, things that didn't quite fit. Baldwin noticed them.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting. Baldwin, looking at the profile, he flags two big anomalies.
Okay, what are they?
First, the victims seem different. The European victims were white. But here, in Nashville and Manchester, the victims are black. That's unusual for sophisticated serial killers. They usually stick to a type.
Right.
Second, where the bodies are left. In London, it was public, theatrical displays. But in Nashville, it's this private home, shocking, but sort of hidden. Different styles.
So is it the same guy changing his MO? A copycat? Someone else involved?
Exactly. That was the debate, according to the material. It made them pause and question what they were really dealing with.
So they have this international link, these questions.
Yeah.
How do they get back to a specific suspect there in Nashville?
They circle back. Local leads, those specific details. That tip from Tyrone Hill about a light-skinned black man driving a white Prius.
Oh, yeah.
He called it a Pius. That becomes key.
Okay.
They combine that with the VICAP results, run DMV records for white Priuses in the area, search local databases.
And the breakthrough comes from Mackenzie, the rookie.
Kind of unbelievable, but yeah, according to the material, he finds something everyone else missed, a name. Shows up on the white Prius owner list, and on Hugh Bangor's party guest list for that house. And on the copyright page of that Picasso book found right there at the Love Hill crime scene.
No way. All three.
All three. The name is Gavin Adler.
Okay. That is incredibly specific. He could have been at the house. His name's in a book left at the scene.
Exactly. It puts him right at the top of the suspect list, and other things start to fit. An officer named Parks had stopped Adler earlier, noted he was really nervous, and Taylor herself goes to his house, doesn't find hard evidence right away, but gets this really strong, chilling feeling about the place.
And then Kendra Kelly disappears. That must have solidified things around Adler.
It did. Kendra Kelly, she's the niece of a woman named Rowena Wright. She goes missing. And her car, found abandoned near where Adler was last seen. That makes the suspicion critical, urgent.
But it's not just Gavin Adler, is it? The investigation takes another huge turn. The sources talk about identical twin brothers.
Yeah, this comes out of the profiling work. Baldwin, working with Memphis, that's Detective Inspector Hy Smythe from the Met in London, he joins the investigation.
Okay.
Their work, connecting all the patterns, the behaviors, it leads them to uncover this shocking fact. Gavin Adler has an identical twin brother, and they were separated at birth.
Separated birth. What's the backstory there?
It's incredibly tragic and disturbing, detailed in the material. Their mother had severe paranoid schizophrenia. She killed their father, then herself, when the boys were just infants. And the babies were left alone with the bodies for over 24 hours. This extreme, horrifyingly early trauma. It's presented as potentially foundational for what came later, shared pathological development.
So the twins are Gavin Adler and his brother.
His biological brother, Tommaso, correct. Gavin was adopted. Tommaso. It turns out he's a famous art photographer based in Florence.
Florence. Okay, that connects back to the art theme. The European connection.
Exactly. It all starts clicking into place.
And the material mentions an online thing, too. Morte and Necro.
Yes, the investigation finds online chats. It looks like Tommaso, using the handle Morte Death, basically was talking to Gavin. Maybe Gavin was Necro?
And Tommaso was leading him.
Seems that way, the dominant one. guiding Gavin, telling him what to do next, including dispose of Kendra Kelly's body and get himself to Florence now.
The whole psychological angle here. Identical twins that shared trauma, maybe developing in parallel pathologically, one influencing the other. It's chilling.
The source material definitely dives into that, presents it as this stark case study, nature versus nurture, right?
Yeah.
Especially because of those infamous Louise Wise services studies on separated twins, the ones where the full results are sealed until 2066.
Right, I've heard of those.
The implication in the source is maybe those files hold some really disturbing insights relevant to cases just like this one.
And the necrophilia aspect.
Yeah.
The source describes it less as attraction to death and more.
A desire for completely unresisting partners. Absolute control. Gavin had this custom plexiglass cage built, called it his cold room, where he kept his victims, his dolls, starved them. It points to this shared, a very specific pathology, objectification and control.
So they identify Gavin, they know about Tommaso, they know Gavin's heading to Florence.
Yeah.
The hunt goes international.
Yes. Decisions made. Follow Gavin. Which means massive international cooperation. They bring in Chief Inspector Falarni, head of the Italian task force, coordinate with British police, Italian police. It's a major operation.
And the challenge is finding Tommaso in Florence.
Right. They're digging through property records, using names Tommaso, Thomas Fielding, that was their father's name.
But wasn't there a trick to finding the right place?
Yes. Crucial detail from Memphis, the British detective. He suggests searching using the father's first name, Gary Fielding. And bingo. That leads them to a second property, a cottage outside the city.
And that's where they find them, the confrontation.
Exactly. Police move in, surround the cottage, forced entry, and they find the twins inside, together. And there's a red-hot skillet on the stove.
And then something happens immediately, something calculated.
Utterly chilling. One of them, the source says, it wasn't clear which twin it was in the chaos. Instantly, deliberately, slams both his hands down onto that burning hot skillet.
To destroy his fingerprints.
Exactly. Destroying the evidence, preventing identification, creating legal hell down the line. It's horrifyingly strategic, even in that moment.
Unbelievable. But Kendra Kelly, was she okay? Was she found?
Thankfully, yes. She was found alive inside the cottage, rescued. She needed Narcan, suggesting she'd been drugged, but she was responsive.
Okay, that's...
And there's one really strange detail the material includes. Amidst all that horror, later, when the twins are sedated in the hospital, they both apparently ask about Gavin's cat. Art.
The cat.
Yeah. Just this weird, small, almost human detail in the middle of all this darkness.
So the twins are caught, but the fingerprint thing, that complicates everything.
A massively huge legal challenge. As the sources point out, without clear prints proving which twin did what, especially for the U.S. murders, it becomes incredibly difficult in court.
And there was something about other DNA in Nashville.
Yeah, the material mentions another DNA chain running locally. It hints that linking every single U.S. murder definitively to one or both twins might be even more complex, unresolved threads.
And it doesn't quite end there, does it? The pretender calls.
Right when you think it's wrapping up, Taylor gets a call. It's someone calling himself the pretender, a copycat killer she's dealt with before.
And he says,
I'm coming for you, Taylor. Straight up. So it throws another wrench in. Is he Necro, the online contact? Or just a separate threat taking advantage? The sources leave it open. A lingering danger.
wow. So how does this massive case affect Taylor and her team's standing after all the trouble with Elm?
Well, catching these guys, an international serial killer case, it's a huge professional win, absolutely restores Taylor's standing, vindicates her instincts, and Lieutenant Elm, the material notes he's gone, placed on medical leave.
Okay.
And personally, her relationship with Baldwin, it's obviously tested by the stress, and now this new threat from the pretender. Sam, her friend, is worried, and Mackenzie, the rookie. Despite the early mistakes, he made that crucial connection to Adler, showed his potential.
So looking back at this whole deep dive, this material, what are the main takeaways?
I mean, we've seen how one just uniquely awful local crime scene can unravel into this global investigation, right? Exposing this really disturbing story about shared pathology, deep trauma, and these connections crossing continents, even online.
Yeah, it really underscores the complexity of modern detective work. You need the street smarts, the intuition, but also the databases like FICAB, the behavioral science, the international
Yeah,
teamwork.
sure. And then the twins themselves, their story, that backstory, the shared specific pathology, the starvation, the control,
Right.
it forces you to think about some really profound questions.
About nature versus nurture.
Exactly. Especially with that kind of extreme early trauma. How much does that shape you? How much is inherent? It really brings that whole debate right to the forefront.
And that chilling idea that shared negative experiences, that early trauma, can forge these incredibly strong but destructive bonds. Makes you really wonder what's in those sealed Louise Wise twin study reports, doesn't it? The ones we can't see until 2066.
It absolutely does. How much of who we become is set in those very first moments, those earliest experiences, and how much is something else entirely. That's definitely something to sit with. A final thought to mull over.